Emperor Nero became known as one of Rome's most infamous, notorious reprobates, with a complete disregard for moral decency. For example, besides abusing little boys on a regular basis,
he touched us here, and here, and here,
and seducing married women, he raped the Vestal Virgin Rubria.
Don't do it! I'm a virgin!
He also had sexual intercourse with his mother on a regular basis, which, as Suetonius tells us, was given away by the stains on his clothing.
jizz in my pants.
But no, that wasn't enough. Nero also hired a courtesan that resembled his mother Agrippina, so that when she wasn't around, the prostitute could do that in her stead. However, he soon got tired of his mother's constant criticisms of the way in which he ruled Rome, so after many violent threats and attempts to murder her with other people, he tried to poison her. However, she had predicted this and made herself immune using antidotes. However, worry yourself not, for Nero had yet another plan. This plan involved feigning cordial diplomatic relations and inviting his mother over to the festival of Minerva, where he at first proceeded to stuff his face into her breasts and kiss them. Then, as Agrippina was to return from the festival home via a boat, Nero had ordered that the sailors on the boat would collapse it. However, there was one minor problem, and that is that the servant maid woman of Agrippina, a woman named Acerronia Polla, was unaware of the plan, and as the boat began to sink, in a bid to save herself, she called out that she was indeed Agrippina. However, something rather like this. Yes, she was clubbed to death whilst Agrippina managed to swim away to safety. When a man named Agamus then proceeded to inform Nero that his mother had escaped by swimming, Nero was rather unamused, so what he did was he procured a dagger, threw it at the feet of Agamus and accused him of trying to murder the emperor. Of course, Agamus was not trying to murder the emperor, but Nero suggested in a rather coercive manner that if his mother was to die using said dagger, maybe he would be pardoned for his crime. Agrippina's last words were, "Smite my womb," insinuating that they should have rather killed the part of her that gave birth to such abominable a son. So what did Nero do then? Did he give her a funeral and a proper burial, like a normal, sane, rational human being? Of course not, no, because Nero is not a normal, sane, rational human being. He is a degenerate. What Suetonius tells us he did is he immediately rushed over to see her dead body, to which he then proceeded to handle her limbs. Basically what this means is he went on to touch his dead mother's body. Was Nero done yet? No, of course not. His wife Octavia he got bored with, and after several attempts to try and strangle his wife, which didn't work out, the people demanded he cease such reprehensible behaviour. So of course he took the people's advice on board, and yeah, no, he didn't. He just proceeded to have her wrists slashed and blamed it on suicide.
What will you learn? What will you learn? That your actions have consequences!
His next wife, Messalina, there was a bit of an issue with this one, because she was already married to a consul nonetheless. So it would be rather a shame if something were to happen, and as fortune would have it, after he died mysteriously, in a plot which Nero had absolutely nothing to do with, he married her too.
Coincidence? I think not!
His next wife, Poppaea Sabina. This is probably the most tragic of the tales. Now Nero enjoyed going to the games, and in one particular night he stayed late to the games. Must have been good games, as one may assume. And as a normal question, Poppaea Sabina asked him as to why he was home so late. A normal question. Now keep in mind, Poppaea Sabina was pregnant with Nero's child. And what would you suggest would be the appropriate response by Nero when his wife, Poppaea, asked him why he was home so late? Well, Nero deemed the most appropriate response was just to kick her and the unborn child to death. His next wife, Antonia, Or, well, not exactly, because she refused his offer of marriage. It's quite hard to imagine why that would be, actually. So, what was Nero's response? Well, yes, she was put to death. Nero's next wife, who happened to be a little boy, that's right, little boy named Sporus. Now, there were two issues with Sporus. One is that it was, well, a child, and two, well, a little boy has a penis, unlike a wife. However, these were not issues for Nero. One, because he was emperor, and two, because he just had Sporus's penis castrated.
Get your hand off my penis!
He then had a full marriage ceremony with Sporus, which rather strangely involved him walking around the Roman public, making orgasmic sex noises whilst he nonced Sporus up.
You can't get an erection.
Next husband. That's right, another one. This time it was a man named Pythagoras. Now, Nero had married himself to Pythagoras in the same way he had married himself to Sporus, just without the castration. Now, one may ask, well, why without the castration? Well, it wasn't because Nero was a moral human being that didn't forcibly castrate people, no. It's because, well, how would one put this nicely, he wanted something at both ends. As Suetonius tells us, he acted as a husband to Sporus and a wife to Pythagoras. Next husband. This time it was a man named Paris. Now, Paris was an excellent singer, actor and dancer. And at the same time that this was happening, Nero had decided he was going to enter the Neronia. Now, this was a singing contest that Nero may or may not have named after himself, because he is in no way narcissistic. Now, as Paris was a very good singer, actor and dancer, and Nero had declared himself the undisputed greatest singer of all time, not due to any particular talent of his own, but rather because everybody else that was better than him was also dead, well, yes, when the other contestants, including Paris, found out that Nero was entering the Neronia, well, it played out something rather like the Wadean Olympics.
On your mark, get set!
At which he won 14 gold medals.
Yep, Paris was executed for being better than Nero. So what did Nero do for fun, you may ask? Well, Nero enjoyed going home after dinner and just randomly assaulting Roman citizens, stabbing any who resisted and then throwing their bodies into the sewers. This got so bad that after one senator nearly killed Nero for maltreating his wife as well, he had to have his own personal bodyguard watch from afar to make sure he wasn't killed. Moreover, for fun, Nero had invented a game. Now, in this game, he would have Dorophorus. By the way, Dorophorus was yet another male husband he had castrated and married in the same way to which he was married to Sporus. Yes, he would have Dorophorus strip him of his clothes, dress him in the skin of a lion, placed into a cage like a lion, and whilst this was going on, he would have boys, girls, slaves, men and women also stripped naked and tied to stakes. And then he would order to be released from his cage like a lion, where he would act as this animal and violently bite the genitals of those tied to the stakes.
Stop it. Get some help.
Basically, he was probably the world's first rapist furry.
Oh, God! No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Then there was Crispinus, but don't worry, Crispinus's penis remained intact, as far as we know. And what do boys like to do when they're young? Little boys, children, well, they like to lead, they like to command, they like to fight, they like to pretend to be soldiers, emperors, generals, that sort of thing. Now yes, one day Crispinus decided he was going to play at being an emperor. However, the only issue was, Nero at this point was becoming rather paranoid of his position, feeling that people were trying to usurp him or depose him from the throne. One could only wonder why. And yes, one day, as Crispinus is pretending to be a warrior, an emperor that's leading Roman legions, yes, Nero walks in.
Oh, now you fucked up. Now you fucked up. Now you fucked up. You have fucked up now.
Yes, Nero saw this boy, Crispinus, not as a sexually gratifying object for a change, but rather as an imminent threat to his position as emperor. So he was drowned by his own slaves. Then there was the Great Fire of Rome, 64 AD, and Suetonius and Cassius Dio propagate the notion that it was Nero that instigated the fire, and of course there is the story that Nero played the lyre whilst Rome burnt. This is almost certainly just not true. It's probably Flavian propaganda. Nero, it was improbable that he was even in Rome at the time of the fire. Tacitus suggests that, for example. However, what Nero did next certainly was of his own doing. What Nero did now was he used the opportunity to revolutionise Rome, to usher the city into a golden age of culture, arts, civilization, to encourage patrons of the finer details of society, in music, in architecture, in society, to reform the nation for the better, to make Rome a city of wonder, of imperial might, beauty and glory, a wonder of the earth, and leave a legacy that would last throughout the ages, never to be forgotten. Well, see, he could have done that, or he could have just built a massive golden brothel. He chose option 2. He also just blamed the Christians, featuring some rather interesting human candles. Now Nero was becoming quite unpopular, and he was beginning to question why this was.
Why am I still getting hate?
This was realised in the rebellion of Vindex in the Gallic provinces. However, it's okay, Nero had a plan, a brilliant plan, a plan that couldn't possibly fail. One may say it was an infallible plan. This plan involved Nero doing absolutely nothing for 8 whole days.
Nothing.
The shell has spoken!
Nothing. We can't just sit here and do nothing.
Indeed, Nero actually sat down for 8 whole days and did nothing, whilst Galba and the Spanish provinces joined in the rebellion. Nero was reminded by the consuls, the generals, those with military experience in a warfare theatre, you know, those with the loyalty of the troops, knowledge of military tactics, supply lines, how to levy troops, how to wage a war, that sort of thing, that this wasn't a valid plan. So what did Nero do? Did he listen to the experienced and tested veteran knowledge of those from the military theatre? No, he just disbanded them all because Nero obviously knew better. No, Nero prepared for full-out war. He made vast battle plans, organised supply routes, levied the troops, rallied the men, inspired the commanders. Well, not quite, because his plan was just to cry. The idea was that he was going to present himself to the enemy, cry and weep in the hopes that they would feel bad for being such naughty, rebellious citizens, and go home. So after much deliberation, he abandoned plan A in favour of plan B.
Right, looks like it's time for plan B.
Oh, right! There's a plan B, is there? It's just plan A was so brilliantly devised, I wouldn't have thought we'd need a plan B.
This time he did indeed raise an army, and he did indeed procure equipment for the army. Just the slight little issue with this is that the soldiers in this army were rather unorthodox in the fact that they were not soldiers of a military theatre. No, they were more courtesans and prostitutes that he had dressed up to look like Amazonian warriors, and the equipment was not one of a warfare background. No, it was more one that you would find in an actual theatre or band. It was musical equipment. Basically, he was going to sing and dance to the enemy in hopes of seducing them. Then he had some bad omens and dreams that would have given Bibulus Vietnam PTSD flashbacks. Then he threw a massive paddy and yeeted his favourite cup against the wall and cried because it smashed. Then he tried to throw himself into the Tiber to commit suicide, but he had another idea. Instead he was going to hire the help of a woman named Locusta. Now Locusta is quite cool in the sense that she is possibly one of the world's first contracted assassins. She even started her own school of assassins, for example, using the medium of poison. Of course, Nero wanted some of this poison that she was so brilliant at making. Just as a side note though, Locusta possibly died in one of the strangest deaths in history. Top 3 at least. Basically what happened is that she was lubed up in female giraffe vaginal juice.
Nice.
And was then raped to death by a male giraffe that they had trained for such purposes. Yes, well, Nero didn't like the idea of poison either, so after trying to hire some gladiators to kill him, which they refused, and after seeing his guards, who basically told him to just go and kill himself, Nero finally committed suicide by sticking a dagger in his own neck. However, a rather sweet point is that if you remember Sporus,
You can't get an erection.
well, Sporus had survived up to this point and was still sharing Nero's last moments with him whilst he committed suicide. Nero's last words were, "Oh, what an artist the world is losing." Because again, Nero is in no way narcissistic. At this point, a tribune pretended to run in, desperate, trying to save Nero. It's written down how pathetic this attempt was, and in the most apathetic way said to Nero, "Oh no, I'm too late." And so that was the story of Nero, the violent, necrophilic, kiddie-fiddling, genital-mutilating, narcissistic, homicidal, suicidal, degenerate reprobate.